Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Molly Dacey, and for this episode, I'd like to welcome Julia Zorab. Julia delivers a leadership programme for Academy Wales, Springboard. Springboard is essentially designed to let women give more and get more out of their work. The programme focuses on the traditionally underdeveloped sector of staff, non-management women. Springboard is designed to get participants back on track and thinking about their ambitions, what they want to achieve, and identifying what is important to them. Based on this, our theme for today's episode is Developing Yourself into Leadership. Thank you so much for joining us, Julia. So to begin, if it's okay with you, I'd like to ask you some quick-fire questions just so our listeners can get to know you a bit better. What was the last book that you read?
Bob Mortimer, The Satsuma Complex.
And would you recommend it?
Yes, very good, very funny. I think Bob Mortimer, he makes me laugh. He's got a very alternative way of looking at things. But
Have you ever watched Taskmaster?
Yes.
I loved the season.
Yeah, it's good.
What was the last thing that you learned?
Oh, that's a good question. The last thing that I learned was a reminder really about myself, which was when I'm prepared, I feel more confident.
Yeah. What is your greatest strength?
My greatest strength is probably my pragmatism. I'm very practical and will look at how I can apply things, whether it's learning or something that needs doing. So yeah, I'd say my pragmatism probably.
What motivates you?
What motivates me? I would say that whatever I'm doing, whether it's in a work context or a home context, it would be that I'm always striving to do a good job, to do the best that I can do, whether that's meeting up with a friend, talking something through with somebody, or running a program or a coaching session. My motivation is always I'm 110% into what I'm doing at the time. So that's generally what motivates me.
Great way to be. And lastly, what profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
I've always ridden horses ever since I was a young girl, and have competed in something called eventing. So it's where you do dressage, show jumping and a cross-country course. And I've competed in the past to a high level, and I had quite a debate in my teens as to whether I was going to do horses, as we would call it, full-time,
Wow.
or go into what I've ended up doing. And my decision was I would keep it as a hobby, which it still is.
Wow.
I do it at a different level now. But probably, yeah, if I could do something else, that's what it would be. But I'd have to be a lot younger now.
I can say very honestly, we've not had that one before.
No, I bet.
Thank you for answering those. It's really interesting just to get to know a bit more about you personally. I have a few more, but we'll come back to them at the end.
Okay.
So I kept the introduction of this episode mainly about Springboard, because you have a really interesting and inspirational personal leadership journey. And I was hoping you'd just share a bit with us your story and how you got into delivering Springboard.
Okay. Well, I won't go all the way back to school, but it's quite a significant statement, I suppose, to start by saying that school was a real challenge for me. And I wasn't academic. And I like the phrase, I'm a late bloomer in life in terms of my own career and development. And so I left school very early with very few exams and didn't really know what I wanted to do, and decided actually to go and qualify as a medical secretary. My father was an anaesthetist, so it was a logical thing of being around a hospital. And so I got a diploma as a medical secretary. And those skills have stayed with me throughout all my career and my life. Absolutely, talk about transferable skills. Not so much the medical bit, but certainly the admin secretarial skills. And I went to work in a hospital where I did lots of different jobs, and really loved working in the NHS. And the sort of theme for me has been, the real enjoyment I got was my contact with patients and the sort of environment of working in a hospital. Then I left there and had a complete change in terms of organisation. Is that I joined a global IT company called Digital Equipment, which was then the second largest computer company in the world. And it was very, very different to the NHS. And it was a non-hierarchical, non-status organisation. And you were paid for performance no matter what role you did.
Wow.
And I really thrived in that environment. I loved the fact that at the time that the rate of change in terms of technology was immense. And there were so many opportunities. And I really did thrive there. There was a lot of change, lots of opportunities, loads of development and training that I could do. And I fitted in the culture and I could sort of really blossom there. And I was there for 13 years. I did 8 different jobs. And because things were changing so fast, there was a lot of change, which suits me. And I became the first female senior manager. So I worked in sales, in facilities, managing buildings. And then I went into the service engineering part of the organisation and became the first female manager in the UK in a service operations role, which is unheard of. And as you can imagine, it's not for today. I have lots of stories about what that was like. And those were the days when there weren't any equal opportunities policies. They'd never had to work with a woman before. So I was very much in a man's world. And there were no policies or procedures around equity. So I had to learn to fight my corner and have my own confidence around what I was doing. But in that role, I also was able to be really innovative, which I loved. Yeah. So I was one of the first people in the UK. We introduced flexible working. We had people working from home. We had people job sharing, unheard of. And, people said that can't be done. And I thought, if we go full circle now, post-COVID, I think it's really interesting how much organisations and managers are having to learn that they can trust people to work in different ways.
Yeah.
But so then after that, I had lots of really inspirational bosses there, all men, obviously, because there weren't any other women. And I had some truly awful ones. And I learned as much from both, probably. And then I was made redundant from digital. I'd been making people redundant. We were reorganising the whole company, and that was a big moment because I then decided I would set up my own business. I wanted to work for myself. It was partly based on wanting a life. I was with my now husband. I have 3 young stepchildren. And I wanted to be home more often and to be doing something different. And so part of that, in working for myself, I had to then think, well, what is it that I really like doing? What am I good at? And the thread throughout all of the different roles I've had has been people. So I was also a role model for lots of women because I'd been the only female manager. I thought, I want to work with people. I want to spend a percentage of my time working with women, and did a lot of research and decided to become licensed to run the Springboard programs. So I'm a freelance licensed trainer, and I actually deliver 5 different programs under the umbrella of the Springboard consultancy, and Springboard is one of them. And there's also a program called Navigator, which is the equivalent of Springboard but for men, which are delivered by my male colleagues. I'm also licensed to licensed trainers to deliver the program, which I enjoy doing a lot. And I've delivered Springboard in all across the UK, but also in the Middle East and out in South Sudan as well. Wow. working out there. So I've been there twice. So it's as you said in your introduction, it's a development program for women, and it is for women at all levels, but very much women who are feeling maybe, what do I want to change, if anything, about my life? And for Welsh Government, I was trying to add up. It's well over 60 programmes that I've delivered, Springboard programmes within Welsh Government. And I think that gives me a really good cross-sectional view because I'm freelance, I'm completely sort of neutral, I'm not part of the organisation in that sense. But it gives me access to a breadth of organisations because the women who attend Springboard are from partner organisations that sit under the umbrella of Welsh Government. And that kind of makes it unique, I think, in terms of what I do. The other thing just to say is that part of Springboard is we have a guest speaker on each workshop who's a woman from within Welsh Government somewhere, or an organisation under that umbrella. And they are always inspiring. I mean, some of them are, the returners, they come back, I've met them before, and others are new. Always inspiring. And sort of linking that into leadership, they're all leaders of some sort or another, and they kind of explore their notion of leadership. And I think, what we do on Springboard is sort of, it's like sowing seeds. So the participants get some tools, some techniques, they listen to inspiring speakers, and they go out and develop that in terms of what they want as leadership for themselves. So that's how I sort of got there. And as I was saying to you earlier, we're just about to deliver workshop 3 for a group that's face to face, and also I've got another program we're halfway through, which is online. So still going strong.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. I strongly believe everyone who's eligible should attend Springboard. For those who can't, I was hoping you could share some insights into how to prepare for entering into leadership roles. So what skills or qualities do you believe are essential for someone transitioning into a leadership role?
I think it depends on the person and their situation. I would say that the first thing, regardless, would be to really know yourself. So that is something that we focus on Springboard, but on all the programs I run. So it's knowing what are your strengths, what are you good at. I mentioned earlier that I wasn't and still am not particularly academic, but I know that about myself, and I know how I can work around that, and therefore what I'm good at, as well as where I might have vulnerabilities, and then being able to work out how you're going to manage those. So I think somebody knowing themselves, knowing their strengths, knowing their qualities, what are the things that they're good at. And another thing I'd say would be for somebody going into leadership is continually, I mean, I don't think you ever finish this, is gathering feedback.
Yeah. And
gathering that from all levels, people above you, people who are colleagues, people who may work for you or know you. And I'm a great fan of sort of 360 feedback and ensuring that those conversations happen, because I think that's the way you get good feedback. And I know if somebody, for example, was to say to me, "Oh, thanks, Julia, you were great, and I've delivered a presentation or run a workshop," I will always thank them for that. But then my additional question is, I really appreciate you taking the time to tell me that. What was it I did that made you think I was great? Because that's what's so valuable to me, is having that little nugget. I think somebody going into leadership, I'd say definitely have a mentor, and think about, a mentor doesn't always have to be through a formal scheme. It can be somebody you ask in a different context to maybe your everyday work, but have a mentor and get coaching when it's useful. And I know something we do on Springboard is lots of participants go back through Academy Wales and say, I'm interested in finding out how I get a coach. And everybody says it's been one of the best things they've done. So it's really valuable. Be open-minded. I think you've got to be able as a leader to adapt. So I think the one thing we can safely say in the world of work, well, the world generally, never mind just work, is that things are changing, things will change, and we can't always predict what that's going to be. And I think as a leader, you have to be able to say, okay, I thought I was going in that direction, or I thought this is what we were trying to achieve, but now it's changed. Be open-minded about how you do that, and how you enable other people to get to wherever you need them to be, really. So those would be, a few snippets.
You mentioned earlier that Springboard is kind of for everyone, not just people entering into leadership. It can be for people at whatever point in their career. But for people who are maybe entering into leadership, it's their first leadership role, or it's something that they want to explore. Sometimes focusing on bigger picture can bring some perspective and make it slightly less daunting. What are some long-term goals or aspirations that new leaders should consider when embarking on their leadership journey?
I think it's always interesting about the bigger picture, because I've attended many TED Talks and discussions and read books about leadership. And personally, I don't think there are any shoulds around leadership. I think it's such an individual thing. And if I think of the people I really admire and respect as leaders, they couldn't be more different in their style and how they go about it and the way they think. So I think in terms of the sort of longer term goals and aspirations, I would say the constant needs to be that you are yourself. And that goes back to my point about knowing yourself, and you will develop your own style. And I would always encourage people to do that, because I think the risk is we can tend to think you've got to fit a mould as a leader. And I think, thankfully we've gone away from that, in the days of the sort of, white military, middle-aged male leaders that's all there were as leaders, and the world has changed now. And so many people I speak to say, do you know what, I never had a plan, and if I had, I'd have been disappointed, because I've gone in I'm waving my arms, which is no help, but I've gone in many different directions, because I responded to what came up at the time. So I think sometimes it is about saying there's an opportunity, that interests me, that excites me, that motivates me, that scares me, I'll go in that direction. So I think that your goals and aspirations are more personal around your style and how you go about it, and understanding yourself, and being able to get the sort of feedback and the sense of the impact you have on whatever it is you're trying to achieve as a leader. And I do think it's timing, and I see this not just with women, but I think it is particular to women a lot of the time, it's about where you are in your life.
Yeah.
So you might have an aspiration and then feel frustrated because it's not the right time at the moment, but it might be for many, many reasons. And sometimes I think you have to say, I'm not going to let that go. I'm just going to have to incubate it for a while, because it's not the right time at the moment.
Yeah.
And that's okay. You've not lost it. It's just it's not the right time.
Yeah.
Or it is the right time. And I think sometimes the stars align and things are meant to be, and off you go. And another thing I would say is about, it's an often used phrase, but I do relate to it. For me, as a leader, I would aspire to people saying that they knew me, that I was, however they saw me as a person. So it's about bringing your whole self to work.
Yeah.
And I do think you, as a leader, what's going on for you at home and what's going on for you at work, it's very, very hard to sort of completely separate those two things, and the one affects the other. And I think that it's okay sometimes to show some vulnerability or some challenges that you're having, within reason. But I think it is about bringing your whole self to work, and people knowing who you are as a person, not just as a leader. I think being a leader is, it's not a job title.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that, because on a previous episode that we've already released, it was about compassionate leadership, but we spoke about empathy and building trust with your colleagues. And if you can't have the basic understanding of what your colleagues are going through in work or outside of work, then you'll never be able to create that trust and that bond that will help you work even stronger. And I was going to say as well, it's interesting what you've just said, because I was at an event last week where we were talking about authenticity, and they were saying never make yourself fit a role, because you'll lose yourself in that. You need to find a role that suits you, because the leadership style or the way that you work is so personal.
Yes.
And it's like exactly what you were saying. If you don't work in the right way for you, you never know where your leadership journey is going to end up.
No. I think also that it does give people as a role model. One of the questions I often ask on Springboard programs is who in the room, and I might have 25, 30 women in the room, who sees themselves as a role model. And there'll be a few hands go up, some will go halfway because they're not too sure, never really thought about it. And my view is we're all role models to somebody. It might be as a sister or as an aunt or as a colleague, or we're all a role model for someone. And I think if you bring your whole self to work and you are open about the things that matter to you, it actually gives other people permission to be more open. I had a speaker a while ago, one of my guest speakers on a workshop, a very, very senior leader in her organisation. And she shared the story. She had a young family, and when she started, she told the story that she was having to put, it's topical at the moment because it's Christmas, but her daughter's nativity play she wanted to go to, and she had to, be in cahoots with her secretary to book in a pretend meeting so that she could leave to go to her daughter's nativity. She'll still be working, and choosing to catch up on what I missed at 10 o'clock at night. And then she said she had this moment where she realised that actually wasn't the sort of leader she wanted to be, and that it wasn't giving other people permission to be open about the things they wanted to do and how they wanted to manage their roles. And so she turned that around and said, what we're going to do is put nativity plays in the diary for everyone to see, and have that level of openness about how everyone in the team could work and cover for each other and get the work done at the same time. And that to me was, was a real sort of point. I thought, that's a good story.
Yeah. You mentioned feedback and how important that can be. I just wanted to touch on kind of ongoing learning and development, especially in a leadership career. And what resources or practices do you recommend for continuous growth?
I think a leader can lead. We often what I often hear is, oh no, I'm not really a leader because I haven't got an army of people behind me that I lead. But I think we can lead in many different ways. So somebody can be an individual contributor, but they're still a leader because of they're leading in their ideas or innovation or change or whatever it might be, as well as those leaders that have a large number of people that work for them. And I think the sort of learning is never ending, and certainly, when you asked me the question earlier on about what did I last learn, I book regular reviews with myself to look at, so what have I done, what have I learned, what would I change, what would I do differently next time. And I've been doing it for a long time, and I still do that, and I think that's a healthy approach to it. I think being a learning fanatic in terms of your own development, and to be interested in. I choose not to do some things that I might come across or people invite me to, or I could pay to go and do, and think, no, I know that's not going to particularly work for me, but I would be sure that I'm always working on my own professional development. I would say experiment, try things that you haven't tried before. One of the best courses I ever did was what was called Outward Bound. So it was in an outdoor environment, which actually suited me because I'm a country girl, I like being outside. But to take leadership out of the classroom or the office environment, and we were up in the Lake District in November, and it didn't get above freezing the whole time we were there. And I was at the time with all my male colleagues. It was when I was in the IT company, but I learned so much about myself and about leadership and others, and we had conversations at a level that we would never have had if we'd been in an office building Lego towers or things out of cardboard. That is what you tend to do. So I would say experiment, and try something different. Change as you go and adapt. I think leadership is about adapting to different circumstances. And as a leader, when I was in the IT company, and I had a team of managers and people working for them, I had to adapt. Sometimes I had to say, like it or not, this is what we're going to have to do. This is the budget we've got. These are the cuts we're going to have to make. And then put my focus into, so how are we all going to do that? Versus saying, this is an idea session. It's going to be very different. And I think you have to learn when you've just got to say, this is what we're going to do, or to be more consultative. And as I said earlier, I think leadership is a choice that you make. It's I don't know anybody that's actually applied for a job that says we're looking for a leader, full stop, sentence. It's like, oh no, it's a choice. You'll have your job title, but actually how you choose to lead that is going to be very individual. So a bit of a roundabout answer, I suppose, but I think it's very much about a state of mind.
Yeah. Thank you. I think I'm going to start putting personal reviews in for myself. That's a really good one to
Yeah.
take away, I think.
I book them in my time management system with myself, and they're in there. And yes, sometimes they get changed and forgotten or missed, but because I write them down, I know that that's what I was going to do. So then I'll roll it over and say, okay, it was going to be every 2 weeks, but I'm looking back over a month.
Yeah.
And also because I'm very self-critical, I always think I could have done more, I could have done it faster, quicker, whatever. And for me, I always start those conversations with myself around what have you done well over the last period of time? What have your achievements been? Because like a lot of people, it's very easy for us to focus on, I was going to do this and I haven't done it.
Yeah. And sometimes you just need to make the space and the time to self-reflect.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for the stories, ideas and advice. Just before we end, I'd like to ask you a few more quick fire questions, if that's okay. Do you or have you ever played a musical instrument?
Yes. I played the piano when I was younger, child living at home. My dad used to play the piano, and I played the piano, but it's not something that I've kept up. No. So I can play a few things I remember by ear, but I can't read music even anymore, which is really interesting. Yeah, it's just gone.
What is your favourite type of food?
Oh, gosh. Probably, I'm not a vegetarian. I love my meat and fish, but we grow our own vegetables. So for me, it's the joy of digging up potatoes when they're just ready, and picking beans, and sadly, you usually have to have some butter on them, but probably it probably is vegetables.
What is your favourite noise?
Favourite noise? Oh, that's a good question. It's an unusual question.
It is an unusual one. It stumps quite a lot of people.
Probably, it's going to be an unusual answer, but when I'm out riding on my horse, I live in a beautiful part of South Wales, very rural area, and when I'm riding, that's my time for me. It's my thinking time, it's my switch off time, and the noise of the horse's hooves when I'm going down a lane, it's just very rhythmic and it's very comfortable to me. And that's my happy place. It'd be one of my favourite noises.
That's lovely. Are you a morning person or a night owl?
Oh, morning. Yeah.
Always been a morning
Always
person?
been a morning person. Yeah. My older brother is completely the opposite, and a while back I went to stay with him, and it's interesting because I'll be up by 6 most mornings. I've got the horse and things that I need to do with the animals. So I'm up and at it in the morning, but ask me to do anything beyond about 9 o'clock and I'm useless. Well, as my brother Pete, he actually runs a nightclub.
Really?
And that suits his body clock because he doesn't get up till lunchtime, but he's wide awake. But if I go and stay with him, it's disastrous.
I can imagine, complete clash.
Yeah.
And lastly, if you could have one superpower, what would it be?
Gosh, it would be to change the world, actually, particularly at the moment with the situation in Palestine and Gaza and other countries, too many to mention, sadly. So I think for me, I learned a lot when I went to South Sudan and worked with people there who, the country's been in a terrible place and so much hope in terms of being able to develop it and for people to have, lives and ambitions and children to be able to go to school. And sadly, that's all degenerated again. So for me, it sounds a bit trite to say peace, but it would be to say, we got peace in the world and people can learn to accept their differences, whether it's whatever the differences might be, and all the things that cause wars. But that would be.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Julia. I hope you have enjoyed the experience as much as I have.
I have. Thank you very much, and have a good Christmas.
You too. Mae'n podlediad sgyrsiau ar arweinyddiaeth ar gael trwy ein gwefan. Mae'r hawlfraint y podlediad yma yn cael ei gadw gan Llywodraeth Cymru. Our Conversations on Leadership podcast is available through our website. Copyright of this podcast is held by the Welsh Government.